Let me read to you a passage from the first chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 29 to 39. It's the Gospel for Wednesday of the first week in Ordinary Time, Year 1. St. Mark writes, "As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand, and helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to wait on them. That evening, after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak, because they knew who he was. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, 'Everyone is looking for you.' Jesus replied, 'Let us go to the neighboring villages, so that I can preach there also. For that is why I came.' So he travelled through Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons." That's from Mark chapter 1, verses 29 to 39. And what does it suggest to us? Well, let us place ourselves in our gospel scene, noticing the details of it so as to relive it with greater relish. There is one current of spirituality and prayer, especially that taught by St. Ignatius Loyola, which recommends that we place ourselves in the scene of the gospel as vividly as we can, and then converse with our Lord therein. So then, our Lord has left the synagogue where he has taught with such electrifying effect, leaving the town which had congregated for the Sabbath in wonderment at him. The people were left amazed by the authority he displayed, authority in his teaching and authority in his power over the demonic. He returns with James and John and Simon, and perhaps others, to Simon's home, where Simon's mother-in-law is in bed with fever. She obviously had not been able to go to the synagogue for the Sabbath, so she must have been very ill indeed. And they told Jesus about her. Consider the case, or rather the ease, with which they tell our Lord of her condition. The Son of God is very accessible. Let us imagine our Lord entering her room with them, gently and full of friendliness. He takes her by the hand and helps her up. No word is reported to have been said by him. He helped her up, and the fever left her, and she began to wait on them. Interestingly, this is the first miracle of healing that Mark chooses to report. Our Lord has come from the synagogue where he expelled a vociferous demon, but here, for the first time in Mark's account, he heals someone of illness. Let us remember too that it is agreed that Mark's Gospel is Peter's account of the story of Jesus Christ. Perhaps from Peter's perspective and according to his recollection, Christ's first miracle of healing was for his own mother-in-law. Perhaps. Another detail that I find intriguing is that there is no mention of Simon Peter's wife, the daughter of his mother-in-law, whom our Lord cured. It is his mother-in-law who proceeds to minister to them. By the time of Simon's call by Christ, was his wife still alive? Perhaps not. So our Lord and his disciples sit down and are waited on by Simon's mother-in-law. the teaching and the drama of the synagogue service are past, and the remainder of the Sabbath day is before them. Presumably, the day was observed in the spirit of the Sabbath rest, but we are not given any details. And then at the end of the day, that evening after sunset, when the Sabbath was over, and people could feel free to bring to our Lord their sick, this is what they did with a vengeance. They brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed, we read. We are told that they brought all of them. Perhaps word had got around during the day that our Lord had cured Simon's mother-in-law, whom many may have known had been sick and unable to go to the synagogue for the Sabbath service. In any case, we are told that following our Lord's expulsion of the demon in the synagogue and his remarkable performance of teaching, we read that rumour concerning him went forth immediately into all the region. News of Jesus had travelled like wildfire, and presumably this had happened that very day. He was the talk of the town and the entire district. Family after family were in a state of excitement and discussion, and many were thinking of the obvious. Their sick and those afflicted by the demonic had at hand an unexpected remedy, and they were going to avail themselves of this blessing instantly, meaning as soon as the Sabbath rest was over. So, as soon as sunset arrived, the whole town, which probably included the district about the town, gathered at the door. There was sufficient light for this movement of people to occur, and our Lord, full of compassion, obliged. We read that Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. Our Lord's public ministry was launched. But despite the desire of the town, he could not stay. He had to reach the whole house of Israel, and through his church, the entire world. It was all a sign of what was to come. The deepest illness, the most calamitous affliction, is sin. While the demons oppressed many of the people physically, their interest, more than anything, was to oppress them spiritually. Before them stood their conqueror, and him they could not better. They knew it, and strove to undermine what they guessed he was up to. And behind them all was the archprince, Satan. The two stand now in battle array, standards unfolded. Christ is on one side, Satan on the other. The victory is and will be Christ's. We have a choice. Which standard shall we follow? The standard of Christ? Well then, choose him and follow closely in his footsteps, using his weapons. Learn from him and follow him unceasingly, for he is meek and gentle of heart,